Hello, Philbeastians. I'm your one and only gaming beast, and today we're talking with the one and only Hollow Wanderer, and I'm just adjusting my camera here, so I apologize. But we're talking about a topic that is very important to me, and that is something that come up in the OSG, and we won't name any names, but the point is it appropriate for your what is it, GM to kill off players in order for story, you know? Now go away, Hollow Wander. What do you think?
Short answer, no. Because, and this comes down to a point of view of what the game is about, the whole point of playing the game. I like to view it as a way to uh, collaboratively express desires, go through adventures, go through dungeons, have a good time, creating a story together, and not that one person dictates that story, which is a common misconception that a lot of new GMs have. They get the power, and instantly they want to start casting people in roles for their movie or characters for their book, and you just need to follow the script. Um,
That's the problem. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Apologies.
Go ahead.
I want to interrupt. No, go ahead. Sorry. I'm an interrupting bastard lately. So.
So good. But yeah, it's essentially, it takes away player agency because one person's opinion matters suddenly a lot more than everyone else's. And if that's the case, if you really want, and this is my strong opinion, if you want to turn player characters into characters for a book, go through a module that you've already completely planned and you know how everything's going to turn out because you've decided how you're going to treat players, such as killing them. Oh, some just lose arms and limbs at my whim and not the actual mechanics, the rules that we've agreed to use to help tell the story and adjudicate things. Well, you've just stolen the opportunity for everyone to collaboratively make a story. Go do yourself a favor, take a writing class, and write yourself your first draft of your novel, or the script for your first indie movie. Because otherwise, it's disrespectful to everyone at the table.
I couldn't have said it better. Paul said it really well. All I want to add to this is that players aren't Redshirts, as this title says. They're not like disposable, as you can determine already before who dies and who lives. Because then what's the point of playing? If I play in a game where I know that, if I don't know, but I know that the DM will decide who for story dramatics, he will die or not. And when I run a game, I know that I'm not in total control of the game. Why? Is because, as I said, the players have agency, they have freedom. Even if I run a module, you can run a module with complete player agency. That means you present the module, the story, you give player hooks, but if they, for example, refuse to, for example, for a very simple example, enter the dungeon, fight the villain, or explore the mystery, whatever the hook is, then you use the assets and the resources as much as you can to continue the storyline. And it's much harder to DM this way. But this is basically the completely linear gameplay, which I think is bullshit. I don't like to coddle my gamers, my players. If they have a character, if they go into a town and they basically go to the king and say he's a douchefuck, yeah, he will send the guards on him and his court wizard and everything. And there's a good chance they will die. But if they use their wits, powers, abilities, skills, everything that they have at their disposal in the right way, they can get away with it. And yes, I have presented challenges to players many times in my life that they have circumvented, but also I have presented challenges that I believe they could, defeat easily, that they could get around easily, and players have died. Not because I planned this way, it's because I followed the rules. And yes, I went simulationist. Oh, a bad word, because everything has to be story and actor-driven. I'm sorry to break this to a lot of people, at least in my opinion. This is my humble, pure, beastly opinion. Role-playing games is a game. Surprise! It's not a theater play. It is not a story, a book. It is not a movie, and it is not a video game. It is not any of these things. It is a role-playing game. Yes, there is acting involved. There's storytelling involved, both from the GM and the players, but there's also a level of freedom. So you have to give up narrative control as a DM when it comes to the players. It's just how it is. Okay?
And you pointed out some really important things that I think need to be emphasized. Is that as the GM, you're really presenting challenges. That's all you should be trying to do. If you're trying to dictate the outcome of those challenges, well, why even have a game system? Why don't we just sit in a circle and tell one another a story? Because that's terminology that gets thrown around a lot, and I think people don't really look at the definition of it. So it's using terms. When you're playing a role-playing game, you're not really storytelling. You're collaboratively writing a story. That's like a closer way of looking at it, because storytelling is about telling past events. You're telling something in past tense. You're not incorporating the present, people's actions. And by saying you're storytelling, you're basically telling everyone else that you're going to be reading them a story, that you're going to dictate how things go, that you're telling them how things will happen. So
my problem with this is that it's a game. For me, role-playing games have to have the part of game in it. Now, if it's just game, then it's almost just like a war game or something else. Mm-hmm. But you should have role-playing, and you should have acting, and you should have storytelling in a game. But it has to also be a game for me. There has to be rules, however light they may be. They can be light rules. I don't need to have them super crunchy. But I'm not against more complex rules, because there's something that Runeslinger said to me in a comment, and he said it really well, is he's not against complex rules, he's against rules that don't make sense. But that's also a very personal thing. What makes sense and what don't make sense to you? Now, there might be rule systems, obviously, where we agree, well, this rule system doesn't work really well, and so on. But the difference is when a DM comes and says, oh, I'm planning to kill off a PC for story reason, I'm sorry, but it's kind of an attention grab. I'm sorry, because I've never done this before. Now, I have presented players with a epic challenge or a great challenge, but I've rolled out the damages and the damage rolls. I've rolled out the attacks, and they would get out of impossible situations, and sometimes they would die, yes. But it happened through simulation, through the game. It wasn't just because I decided somebody needs to die in a game. And believe me, there was player characters that I wanted to kill off. But if you just kill them off, you basically take away all the power from the players, and they lose their agenda for playing. As you said, the player agenda, they lose it all, and they lose their motivation for playing, because the whole point of playing is, for me, is you're not just presenting challenges, you are simulating a world to them, and they are reacting to the world as the characters, whatever characters they made. So that's how I see it.
Why play with someone who's an asshole? I mean, ultimately, if you're that guy who's just angry because they don't get their way, same goes for players. If you get angry when your character dies, or that you don't get your way, that you don't always succeed, well, I think you have some issues to sort out, frankly, because that has to do with obtaining control and using it against others. Really, you don't need to resort to those kinds of tactics. If you're playing the game and abiding by the rules that everyone has agreed to, there should be no question about why my character died. In fact, you can make it an amazing experience if you want, even if it's something, say they died in a very unepic way. You can highlight that in a nuanced fashion. Say your character slips and conks themselves on the head as they're trying to get to the cleric. Doesn't that make for an interesting story for your next character or for your comrades? Like, he was such a klutz, man. Or he had bad luck. Or through his death, somehow, through this character's death, good occurred. You can do all sorts of things with that.
How do you do this heroic sacrifice? In my Rifts game, for example, I had the player SRC Joker, Andrew Knapp, and he did a really cool thing. It's a spoiler for if you haven't watched it, but basically they were fighting a demigod called the Harlequin. And the Harlequin, they entered his world where he had omnipotence power. He wasn't as powerful, but in this world, in this castle, he could do pretty much whatever. And he played with them. They went through room to room, through challenge to challenge, because he was bored. And then he fought them, but only with his, as himself, without the power of his realm. So they had an actual chance. And he had stats and everything. Okay, he had very high stats. It was a very challenging battle. 2 of the players died. Andrew Knapp, he actually, the way his character, a juicer, died, a augmented human, was that he held down the Harlequin, and then he released all of his grenades, and Juve, with his mech, shot in his rockets. And basically, it was like napalm grenades he released, and he held them down, and it was such an epic way to die, but it wasn't something I expected, and it was a great moment, and I haven't expected this, Retro Kaiser's characters died, but also it was all rolled out, because the reason why I like the rules and the reason why I like simulation is because in a video game, often what I don't like is for example, I'm bringing up example Far Cry 3. After a short while, you level up your character and you go through you just mow down enemies after enemies, right? And then you have this one douchebag dude with his little hair come down and knock you down with one hit. Even though you've been mowing down hundreds of fucking guerrilla fighters, you've been killing tigers, basically sharks, and every wild animal you can imagine. So you become a badass, and he knocks you out like this. Because the DM, the people who programmed the game did this that way to create a storyline. But this is the limitations of video games. We don't have this limitation in role-playing games. We have the freedom to do everything. But if we start limiting players because we want to create a specific storyline, and we don't let the players create the storyline that they want through their actions, then why are we even playing role-playing games? Let's just all play some video game then. This is the advantage to role-playing games have over video games, is that it's free. And you have to also give the players freedom. You're not in total control of the game. And if you are, then your game sucks. I don't want to play in it.
Exactly. I mean, the benefit is really that you have a human being, not a computer. So regardless of what you throw at them, they can give you a response. Not only that, but it goes down to, if you really are about storytelling, then why do you play with the system? Why do you play with rules? Because there's got to be something about the rules you like. You have to like the implementation of chance. Maybe I don't get my way. Maybe I don't succeed, but I get close. Maybe I do succeed, but barely. That kind of aspect of chance is often why we choose specific systems, because they handle it differently. But if you don't care about that, say we're talking about story, because this is all about story, guys, right? Right? Story? So once upon a time, there was this little girl called Goldilocks, and she was wandering through a forest, and so on. We can sit there and talk and tell stories to one another all day long.
Storytelling is also fun. For me, this is not role-playing. It's maybe an element of role-playing, but for me, role-playing is also this fella here, okay? Or this fella, the chance. I love the dice because it gives an uncontrollable factor of chance, and this is what I call fate. Even in Greek mythology, if you think about the epic tales, there was something the gods could not control, as omnipotent they were, and that was fate. The one power that stood over the gods and the heroes and the mortals alike was fate. And in role-playing games that simulate a lot of our old mythologies and stories, and just history also, what we simulate, is this little guy and all his friends, the dice, okay? And I'm not saying that you can play role-playing games with cards too. I've seen system with cards. I have system also without dice. But I like the dice because it's very direct, really quick, and you can see right away how well or how bad you did. Doesn't matter the system, but you can see it. You can see if you have succeeded, as Hollow Wanderer said, in a medium way, if you have failed, if you just barely failed, if you just barely won, or you have won in an epic fashion. And this will also determine, I always like to have my players describe how it goes on, like the attack, the skill roll, the diplomacy check. Like with my character, Groy Fitzgalahad, in a Rifts game where everybody, it's all about mega damage and shooting shit and whatever. Fitzgalahad cannot shoot worth shit. He's not a combat guy, but he loves to make deals, okay? And I describe how I made like an epic deal, you know? And then I have to think about, okay, how would he make an epic deal? And this is the thing, is that the story is also controlled. There is a part of the story that is controlled by these guys, you know, and by chance. The way how I throw the dice, you know, either digitally or physically. And this is the thing, is that when players dice or DMs dice fudge, I mean, look, as a DM, I have manipulated dice in favor or against players, but nowadays I don't like to do that anymore. You know why? Because I like this part of chance, that nobody is free of chance. Nobody is free of fate. Doesn't matter how powerful you are in any game, in any setting, doesn't matter. The element of chance should be there. And that is what I like. And even a game like, yeah. Go ahead.
Exactly the whole point. I mean, chance is what makes it fun. That's what makes us coming back. That makes us come back. Because there are a finite amount of options when it comes to races and class combinations and equipment. Yes, there's a lot, but they're finite because they're defined. But the reason we keep going back is you can play the same character, change like same class, same race, same weapon preference, but based on the outcomes, based on how you depict that character and the ultimate dice roll results, with your skill taken into account, you can get completely different kinds of games, regardless of your setting, regardless of the situation, based on your success and failure and how significant it is in the game. So it's just something that a lot of people seem to underestimate when they make lofty comments like role-playing games are devoted to storytelling, that it's a storytelling game.
That is just one opinion about role-playing games. That is one direction. That is not my direction. I will accept it as a direction, but it's not my direction. So.
Yeah. And on that note, with fudging dice, what I prefer to do is, just like you've mentioned, have people describe it. But I will alter bonuses based on what they do. So, say they approach picking a lock, and this character goes, all right, so I'm going to stand down and crouch, make sure the guy's not watching me. I'll pull up my dagger, and I'll just enter it through the slot, grab a fingernail, and try to jimmy it and jig it as I turn the handle at the same time. So that, okay, I see what you're doing.
I love the accent. I'm sorry, I love it.
What if he said, so I crouch over, I made sure that the guard wasn't looking because I knocked him out first. Tap on the back. Pull out my thieves too. You pull out the needle, you pull out the little crank, and I jimmy around for a second. I'm trying to find that particular. I think I've seen it before. Oh yeah, Bob, you down the street used to show me how to use these locks. It's a cinch. And then you roll. I'm gonna modify that. Oh, you're using tools. That's gonna make a difference to me.
Oh yeah. There always should be a difference.
The fact that you went into description, I'm gonna be more lenient on the bonuses I give you before the dice are rolled. I like to modify things before the dice are rolled, not after, because then you're making a decision on whether the player succeeds or fails because the result has already been rolled, and you're going, I don't want that, or I think it should be something else. But
that is the difference: giving bonuses and making and having something auto fail or auto success. Okay, there is a huge difference. Giving bonuses or negatives for just good role playing descriptions is a whole different storyline than basically saying, oh, this will succeed or this will fail because story. Okay? But if somebody really puts their effort into describing, for example, lockpicking, which is it's quite a complex activity, you know. For example, you know, as you said, I really liked how you described it. You know, maybe he knows a way. He has a special lockpick for this specific lock, because this one has a third tumbler, which is a little bit heavier, and this lockpick has, I don't know, maybe a little spring on it or shit like that. I don't know. And it doesn't have to work really in the real world. Or this is what I hate when people post, oh, look at this guy. He says that arrow shooting isn't realistic in movies, or like if that sword fighting isn't realistic. Well, I'm sorry, but unless you're trying to play a super realistic historical game that doesn't feature magic at all or any kind of other stuff, you're playing a cinematic game. D&D is very cinematic, okay? The problem with super realistic role-playing, it's like it's just going to be bogged down by too much simulation, and it's just going to be boring, at least to me. And I'm not saying it's going to be boring for everybody, but to me. Now, you can have stuff that is more realistic. That is fine for me. But if you're trying too hard to be realistic, it's just not going to work, at least for me.
Yeah, and everyone has their preferences. I mean, the whole point of it is fiction. It's not reality. And, I mean, some people go over the deep end with the reality thing. But by the same token, I know myself, I like to include you having to worry about your food, worry about your body temperature, plan ahead, because, you know, wearing that metal plate over your chest as you enter an icy storm, it's not going to turn out well, buddy.
No.
I like people to worry about those things. But what is the point if I choose that the player is going to die because they entered the snowstorm with their heavy armor on?
Well, that's also not realistic, you know. It's also a bullshit move, because people have survived all kinds of things, okay? And people have, in real world, survived also different wounds. I mean, there's people who have been stabbed in the brain and survived that, okay? It's a rare case, but it has happened, okay? So for you to decide what's realistic or not, you would have to have a full, complete working knowledge about medicine, biology, historical fighting, whatever period you're working in. Especially if you're going to go with sci-fi or fantasy, then go fuck yourself, because then everything is thrown out the window. And if you bring up some kind of sci-fi novel because, oh yeah, because Asimov said, Asimov can say a lot of things. I can say that I accept the way how robots work in this book, or from Marvel Comics or from Star Wars, and your opinion is invalid, because unless if you're playing a super realistic historical game that doesn't include anything non-fictional, okay, that it doesn't include anything fictional, only then you might have a point with references. Because if you bring up, because this movie says, well, I could bring up another one and say, I accept this. This is how it works in this world, okay? Because, for example, magic, this is just how you want to do it. And you don't like this type of magic, but you prefer this type of magic, just for a simple way of saying it. Or you say that, oh, this superpower is ridiculous. And I'm saying, well, and what's with the other superpowers? Every superpower is technically ridiculous, because none of them would ever happen, you know? So that's the thing, is that it's silly, at least to me. So I think we agree here with the DM being a total dick and deciding, oh yeah, you're gonna die. And who's gonna die? How do you determine it? You know, it's like, no, give them challenges. That's how I do it. I give them challenges, and sometimes it's challenges that are a little bit out of their league, but what I believe they can come over, and just like a video game, they can go to another area, do other adventures, and return, grinding, so to speak, but in a more interesting way. You know?
Yeah. And I just like to make a final comment or reiterate back to our original point. Not only is that all of that about your preferences, what kind of game you want to run, it's all about your likes, what your players are going to enjoy, their preferences, but also why include using any of the mechanics in a system if you're just going to decide that a person dies or succeeds? Why would you go to the work of modifying a system to add more mechanics that revolve around body temperature, as an example, yet decide you're just going to die? because I said so. It's not fair. Doesn't make sense. Fuck off.
I couldn't have said it better, and I think we're going to finish here. Hollow Wanderer said it the best. I am the Gaming Beast, aka Dorobka, my fellow Beastians, and this was... Go ahead, Paul.
This was... I'm missing it.
The Hollow Wanderer.
Oh, yes. Yeah, this is the Hollow Wanderer. Yeah, channels by the same name.
Yeah, check it out. It's cool stuff. Cool story, bros. Many cool story, bros. Check it out. And yeah, we're going to finish here. And thank you for watching this impromptu Little Dorobka's Dungeon. And I hope you enjoyed it. For the Death Mug of Doom, fellow Beastians.